Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. In America, elections are determined at the ballot box, not by an assassin's bullet. In recent months, we have seen two such attempts on the life of former President Donald Trump. First, in Pennsylvania, and most recently, in Florida. That these incidents were allowed to occur is a stain on our country. We have endured through assassinations of political leaders, including presidents. It is destructive to our country. It is destructive to our democracy, our constitutional republic. And it undermines the confidence that Americans have in their government and in the electoral process. But for a millimeter's difference, Donald Trump would be dead. But for a millimeter's difference, an assassin would have upended our election. Regardless of how every American feels, regardless of how every American intends to vote, it is the right of the American people to determine the outcome of this election. The idea that our election could be decided by an assassin's bullet should shake the conscience of our nation, and it requires swift action by the federal government. It requires Congress to ensure that the Secret Service provides the same level of protection as it does to the President of the United States, to the leading candidates for president. And in this case, former President Trump and Vice President Harris. Either one of them is going to be president come January 20th, 2025. And the American people should get to make that choice. I want to thank my colleague from New York, Congressman Richie Torres. We immediately moved to introduce this legislation in the aftermath of the first assassination attempt on Donald Trump. And it is shocking that it took a second assassination attempt for Donald Trump to get the same level of protective detail from the Secret Service as the President of the United States. It shouldn't have come to that, which is all the more reason why this bill is necessary, to ensure that this never happens again, and that the Secret Service conduct an immediate review to determine what resources are needed, what personnel is needed, and report immediately back to Congress to ensure that every candidate running for president gets the same level of protective detail as the current president, and that the same level of protective detail afforded to the vice president is afforded to the vice presidential candidate. We have a responsibility to ensure their safety and their well-being. And I want to also commend my colleagues, Congressman Mike Kelly and Jason Crow, who are leading the House task force on the attempted assassination of President Trump. Their work to investigate this incident and the detailed shortcomings within the Secret Service will certainly help Congress implement further meaningful reforms in the future and to ensure the funding and resources are available. I think the most important thing for the American people to understand is that it is the responsibility of the government to ensure that our elections are free, are fair, and are decided by the American people at the ballot box, and that any attempt, either by a foreign government or by a fellow citizen, to undermine that by trying to assassinate a political candidate must be stopped at all cost. And so I thank Speaker Johnson, I thank Leader Scalise, I thank Chairman Jordan for swiftly moving to advance this legislation to the floor for a vote. And I encourage every single one of my colleagues, regardless of their political views, regardless of whether they like or dislike one of the candidates, to recognize the fundamental fact that we have a responsibility to ensure their safety and well-being, and let the American people decide who will be president, not an assassin and not an assassin's bullet. And with that, I reserve.